Good afternoon, and welcome to the Aging at Altitude series we have today. Thank you so much for joining us for our Lunchtime Conversations webinar. My name is Lindsay Haynes, the event manager with Prairie Mountain Media, and I will be moderating today's session. So our Aging at Altitude webinar series platform gives you the opportunity to ask any questions at any point during the presentations today. So whether you're on a tablet, a phone, or just your computer, there's a little Q&A box that's going to be at the bottom of your Zoom screen where you can enter any of those questions, or you can chat us at any time as well. That's also found at the bottom. So today we have the pleasure of hearing from two speakers covering the presentation and the topic of funerals and everything that you need to know. Each of our speakers will present for about 20 minutes, and then afterwards we'll follow with that question and answer portion. So don't forget, if you have any questions for our first speaker, just enter those into the chat or the questions, and then we will address those at the end, and we'll get going. So today, starting off, we've got Alejandro Ruiz. He is the sales manager of Crist Mortuary and Mountain View Memorial Park. He will be covering the importance of pre-planning. And then we'll follow with holistic funerals and green burial, which will be presented by Karen Van Vuuren. She is the co-founder and managing partner of The Natural Funeral. So that being said, I will go ahead and turn it over to Alejandro, and we will get started.
Lindsay, thank you so much, and thank you for everyone at Aging at Altitude for the privilege of being able to speak today. I'm going to be sharing my screen here very shortly, and as Lindsay mentioned, please, as we go through, any questions at any time, I do hope that you find the content to be helpful, and I'll state this at the end again, to be thought-provoking. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right, and please do let me know if you cannot see the slide in front of you here, but it should say your life, your legacy, plan to make it right.
Looks perfect.
All right, thank you so much. And so as Lindsay had mentioned, I'm Alejandro Ruiz, sales manager, and I represent Crist Mortuary and Mountain View Memorial Park. I have been in the funeral industry. I've had the privilege of being in the industry now for 16 years. And, you know, really why I got into this is just the privilege of being able to take care of people at a very difficult time in their lives. I started working in a doctor's office for over 10 years. I also worked ambulance and emergency room. And then I've also I'm an Army veteran, having served with them for 8 years. I was a chaplain assistant when I was doing that. And so I found myself just having a passion for taking care of people. The Crist Mortuary and Mountain View Memorial Park is honored to be part of the Dignity Memorial Network, the nation's leading network of funeral, cemetery, and cremation providers. Today, we'd like to share some information about a subject that we all think about from time to time, but rarely discuss: planning ahead for funeral and cemetery arrangements. Folks, choosing how you want to be remembered is very personal, and there are many options available. Just a second here, I'm trying to move into the next slide. There we are. Folks, we feel strongly that no one should have to come through our doors unprepared and uninformed on the day that they've lost a loved one. Unfortunately, many families face a death just that way, making decisions during a very, very difficult time, at times arguing over details and choices, and scrambling to gather the money for the expenses. Ask yourselves, when family and friends gather and reflect about you, what will they say about your life? How will you be remembered? What will be your legacy? We're privileged to serve many families during their time of need. Pre-arranging funeral and cemetery plans saves time and stress and can be a gift to those you love, allowing them to focus on the more important details of celebrating a life lived. A survey was originally conducted by the University of Washington Medical School, and what they wanted to see was what people considered the most stressful events in their lives. Now, what I encourage each of you to do is to look at these stressful events and start to mentally rank them from 1 to 6, 1 being the most stressful, 6 being the least. We'll do that here for a few seconds, and then what I'm going to do is, in the interest of saving time, I'm going to move ahead with the results here in the next slide. So we'll give it a few seconds here, and then I'll move to the next one, and you'll be able to see what the results are. So what you'll see is that the respondents in the original survey felt overwhelmingly that losing their spouse would be the most stressful event in their lives. The results also indicated that other than divorce or marital separation, the next most stressful event is the death of a family member. The thing to think about here is, which of these 6 events are we certain to experience? Unfortunately, what we're all going to eventually face is the loss of a family member or a loved one. So then I'll go ahead and ask this question here. If you were faced with the death of a spouse or a family member, what would you and your family do? Would you know who to call for help? Do you know how your loved one would want to be remembered? Where would you start? And then I'll go ahead and flip the question here and ask, how would your loss impact the ones you love the most, both emotionally and financially? When there's a passing, your loved ones will be overwhelmed with grief and emotion. And in most cases, they're going to be at the funeral home or cemetery, mulling over paperwork, pondering over questions they may or may not know the answers to, and stressing over the details of your memorial, or wondering how they're going to pay for it all. Now, most of us put a lot of effort into planning important life events. These would include weddings, college education for our kids, or retirement. Beyond that, most of us year after year are going to spend thousands of dollars for home, health, and auto insurance premiums, but never ever get into the discussion of funeral and cemetery planning. Why? Doesn't it make sense to plan for the inevitable? So when we look at planning for things and paying insurance premiums, these are for things that we are hoping don't happen. They might happen, but when it comes to a passing, we know that it's something that will happen, and we find ourselves very uncomfortable even broaching the subject. Folks, planning together in advance avoids painful guesswork when death occurs suddenly. Your mind is clouded with confusion and grief. Purchasing your funeral at today's prices can also protect your family from inflation in the future. People prearrange to give themselves and the people they love peace of mind. I'm hoping that this is making sense here so far. What we'll go into now is just some simple steps here to get prearrangements in place. The first step is to reflect. How do you want to be remembered? When your family and friends share their memories of you, what are some of the things that they'll say? What are your family's traditions and customs? And how might they influence the type of service they would like to have for yourself or your loved one? And what type of meaningful memories can we capture to tell your story for future generations. After you've made some decisions about your service, the next step is to record your information. Our nationwide network serves nearly 300,000 families each year. To help the families we serve, we've created a personal planning guide that can help you record your wishes and make them known to your loved ones. Planning your arrangements in advance is truly a gift to those you love. In step 3, in securing, we mean that we'll work with you to provide options for covering the financial aspects of your arrangements. Like all costs, funeral and cemetery costs continue to increase over time. Coming up with cash quickly when a loved one dies can place a burden on loved ones and add to the stress of the loss. So by securing a plan, you're going to lock in today's prices, potentially saving your loved ones thousands of dollars. And planning doesn't mean you have to spend a lot of money or any money at all. Some choose to fund their entire arrangements through savings. Funding through specialized funeral insurance allows you to select an affordable monthly payment and receive coverage for the full amount of your plan, even if the death takes place while you're still paying. There are a lot of options to consider with the help of licensed and trained advisors, and that's what we have here at Crist Mortuary. In the process, there are some families that do consider using their existing life insurance policies, but what I advise all is to just keep in mind that the initial purpose of life insurance was likely to cover expenses left behind, as well as provide funds for the surviving family. Life insurance proceeds also take time to collect. Most funeral and cemetery providers require payment at the time that services are provided. Step 4 is share. Talking to your loved ones about funeral and cemetery planning can be difficult, but it is important to discuss the plans that you've made. Folks do keep copies of your pre-arrangement documents in a safe but accessible place. Make sure others who may have assisted you in your planning, like family members or religious, legal, or healthcare advisors, know where your documents are filed. Going through the process of and making pre-arrangements is a wise decision that shows you care. It alleviates some of the stress of the loss and grieving. It eases the financial burden, provides you with peace of mind, and it lets your families and friends celebrate the life you lived. Our funeral and cemetery professionals are committed to helping those struggling with loss. For us, there's no greater responsibility than helping families honor and celebrate their loved one's life. And we're here to help you secure peace of mind that comes from knowing you did the right thing for your family. What you're going to see there listed in front of you is, again, a little bit about us as a Dignity Memorial provider. And then in conclusion, folks, it's your life and your legacy. Plan to make it right. I want to thank you so much for your time today. I hope you found the information to be helpful. And here's some of my contact information here at the end. If you want to give us a call on the main number, or if you want to email me there, feel free to do so. Questions, or if you want to schedule an appointment. And for those who may not be comfortable coming into the facility, we are capable of doing virtual appointments through WebEx. All right, thanks so much. That's it on my end.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alejandro. That was great. So we will go ahead and go straight into Karen's presentation next. So like I said at the beginning, if you have any questions for pre-planning, or anything involving the services that Alejandro offers, just shoot us a quick chat or just insert it into that question and answer box, and we will ensure to get to those at the end. So with that being said, I will go ahead and turn it over to Karen.
Hi, can you see me okay?
Yeah, looks great.
Right. So I have a PowerPoint as well, but I'm going to start by just sharing a little bit about who I am and what the natural funeral is. And I like that Alejandro shared a little bit about his biography, because the human to human piece in this work is so important. And I am in this work, I feel, guided by my brother, who died when he was 9 years old. And I was 11, and he died on his own in an ICU. They took off life support, and I was a child in London. My parents received a phone call to say that his life support had been removed and that he had died. And children are very connected, and I knew that my brother had passed on. Even I knew the phone was going to ring. And my father, who was a really honorable and devoted man to his family, was also a veteran from World War II and had certain coping mechanisms from the trauma that he experienced as a soldier at age 14 in World War II. And he turned to us and said, well, Dirk, that was my brother's name, he has gone, and now we have to get on with life. And there was no memorial. He was cremated. There was nothing for me as a child to integrate this death of this 11-year-old boy who had actually been sick from shortly after birth. And so I didn't get into the funeral business. I was a journalist in my 20s. I didn't get into the funeral business, or I should say death care business, as I like to call it, until I had children in my early 30s. And I really started to reflect as a mother on how my mother, my father experienced my brother's death, how there was not support, how there weren't choices. They didn't know how to be with this event. And it really didn't hit home for me until I had my own children and began to question how I had integrated it all. And I became a hospice volunteer first and foremost. And I worked in an assisted living home and got to be a caregiver and got to be with families who were anticipating the decline of their elders, and to be with them to a certain degree on that journey as well. And then I started a nonprofit called Natural Transitions, which was all about education, and support, which I felt that my family had not really had. And it was about, what are your choices when someone passes? And as we know, death is in this culture a subject that we don't want to talk about it, because we feel like we're somehow inviting it when we talk about it. And yet I believe that being consciously prepared and informed is really a huge asset when you are facing the death of a loved one. Like, to know, how can I really meet this event and honor this person who has been in my life, and really get to integrate it. So I'm really an educator as well as someone who's now in the funeral business. And I'm going to share my slideshow. We started a funeral home in 2019, myself and some partners, Seth Vidal and Daniel Ziskin. And let's see if I can make this work. Hopefully it's appearing on the screen. I'm sure I'll hear from Lindsay and Matt if it isn't. So here's a picture of Seth, who is one of the co-owners. Apologies to Dan, you weren't there when we were having our little tea ceremony, which is a big part of our funeral home, to have our clients come and to invite them into our beautiful space that really feels in so many ways not like a funeral home. It's a reimagination with local art and original art on the walls. And so this is Seth and Daniel Ziskin, who is a PhD environmental scientist and works with atmospheric science, and comes to our funeral home really with a commitment to environmental sustainability, is not pictured. So apologies, Dan, but love you, and you've really been a part of making this vision come to reality. So I'm going to give you a little tour. That's not a very interesting slide to look at, is it? I'm going to give you a mini tour. I've got 3 videos. I'm being quite daring here to share with you. They're very short, but what we're talking about with what the natural funeral offers, which are choices that are maybe not on the menu of some, or mostly funeral homes don't have these on the menu. I feel, provide a little bit of a pictorial window into what I'm talking about, because otherwise it's something that people can't quite understand, and pictures really speak volumes. So I'm going to give you a little mini tour of the funeral home. Now, this video was made in 2019, pre-pandemic, but nevertheless, you get to have a little look-see at who we are, and perhaps that will help you to understand. So the next video, it's about 1.5 minutes, so very short, and I'm going to start it now. That was just a little window, if you walked through our doors, what you would see. So as a holistic funeral home, our values are really about honoring and considering the environment in the choices of that we present to our families. And one of the key differences, I would say, or one of the things that make us special, is the way that we care for the deceased upon death. And we do not use any chemicals that are toxic. We only use natural products. We use essential oils in a ceremony called Reverent Body Care, which you'll actually see a short video of in a moment, because we really believe that there is a way that we can have the deceased present for families for, as you know, the period that they feel is right for them, which does not involve having to use these chemical preservation methods. And I have actually worked in natural death care for 20 years. And for many years before I had a funeral home, I was called as a midwife, as a guide, a counselor to families who wanted to have this very sacred experience of being with their loved one in a way that is, you know, very ancient, and where we are really connected quite palpably with with caring and expressing our gratitude and love and appreciation for the person in their presence. And that can be in a home or it can be in a facility. And at the Natural Funeral, you saw in that video, we have a small, very sweet beetle kill pine chapel that allows for this reverent body care to happen. And I'm not going to say too much more about it, because in the video you're about to see, we have a client who is speaking. And I feel that the clients who we have had the honor to serve can really testify to why this has been meaningful for them. And so this video will demystify a little bit what reverent body care is. And it's not that all of our clients choose to have reverent body care. Some are just wanting us to provide cremation or burial without this being with their loved one in this way. But this is something that makes us different. And I want to share with you a glimpse of what that is.
Our friends and the Natural Funeral helpers were there to prepare his body, anointing him with natural oils, and even instructed me how to do that. It gave me more time to adjust and accept his death, and to touch him and to be with him. And that, I think, was very beneficial in my healing process. Jake was treated in a loving and honoring way. That whole week was so impactful and so powerful for both my husband and I, and for our older son, James. We would have never done it had the Natural Funeral not been there to direct us and to lead us down that path.
I just always feel so moved when I hear Debbie speak. That family has spoken so publicly about the pain of the loss of their son and also their healing journey. And I just have so much respect for Debbie and for JW, her husband. And that was a sudden death, and yet this ceremony, it is actually a ceremony either led by us, because we do step into a role that is ceremonial to invite, not to be prescriptive about how things should unfold, but to invite people to share poems and prayers. But it's sudden death where it can be the most powerful to have this reverent body care experience with your loved one. And yet, you know, it takes courage and trust that, yeah, this is going to be part of what helps to put us on a journey towards healing. And it can be incredibly beautiful. It might sound really foreign that this caring for our deceased, which again is an ancient thing where we used to wash and anoint and pay respects in a very simple way. It might sound very foreign, this concept that I'm bringing of reverent body care, but I just want to let it land with you and just know that there is more that can happen when someone dies. That is your creative gift to being with this death, than we will take the body away immediately or very soon after the last breath. And for some people, you know, they can't necessarily go there, and we honor all choices. This is just one of our unique offerings. I'm covering a lot of ground here, and now we're going to burial. And I want to explain just some of the options that we provide, so you again can have this informed understanding of what you can choose when someone in your life passes, which is going to be inevitable for all of us. So we are a company that supports sustainable options and forms of disposition, as it is called. And in terms of burial, of course, has been with us for a very long time. Actually, so has cremation. But in our current world, and certainly in North America, a standard burial in a conventional cemetery requires what is called a vault to cover the grave. That can be cement, or it can be fiberglass or plastic. And the burial container, the casket, is buried at a certain depth, and typically it's 6 feet. We've got 5 feet in this graphic here, and there are conventional landscaping practices, and yeah, there might be a large marker that goes by the grave, and so that's kind of the convention in North America. Green burial is something that has been growing in popularity for, I would say, the last 20 years at least. It exists in many cultures, and there are traditions like the Quaker tradition where they would put the person into a very simple grave in a pine box, and there's not a lot of ornamentation, and often Quaker cemeteries do not have landscaping that is very fancy or resource intensive in the use. And so green burial is an option that I've been advocating for definitely 20 years here, to have more choice locally so that we can have this simple return to the earth. And in the Jewish tradition, of course, there is the idea of the pine box and going into the ground very simply. But there's a limit to the number of cemeteries that will not require some kind of grave covering, because they want to be able to do their landscaping, their lawn mowing, and they don't want the land to settle, so that makes the lawn mowing difficult. And so as far as having an unembalmed, so very simply shrouded, or in a natural pine wood biodegradable casket option, there's not as much as we would like, but more is becoming available. And in the last year, we have worked with the town of Lyons, I should say, and their cemetery to have a green section. And that means we have been able to be with families where the body is hand lowered into the grave. There is a shroud or just a simple casket, which we have our caskets made locally. One of our values is to support artists and artisans. And so our families have been able to have this experience of green burial at cemeteries like Lyons Cemetery. And the other picture you see here is not Lyons, I should say, but I didn't have a photograph of how a grave looks that is intended for green burial. And there are these wood pieces across the grave, which the casket is placed on, and there are ropes attached to the casket, and then the pieces of wood are removed. So just to kind of give you a bit of an idea of how that works. There are lots of woodland cemeteries in England, and in the US, the number of green burial options is definitely growing. I'm going to touch on flame cremation because as a funeral home, we certainly offer it, knowing that it is the most popular form of disposition in the United States at this point. And, I certainly, when my parents died, I didn't have the knowledge I have now about options, and they were cremated. And we have families, that feel that this is something that resonates with them, and being buried is not, it doesn't appeal for who knows, you know, some reason, like the idea of being under the ground. And cremation is a very convenient, simple form of disposition. I would say, just as an educator, that sometimes people are not necessarily, even people who have very strong environmental leanings, not necessarily thinking of it is using resources that are not renewable. Some crematories are typically gas powered, and so, you know, there's an environmental consequence to flame cremation. You're putting CO2 in the air, and if you do have amalgams in your teeth, mercury inside the fillings, then that is going to be vaporized into the atmosphere. So cremation is the most popular form of disposition. It took a long time for it to get to that point. It was not popular when it was first introduced. The modern cremation process that started in Italy in 1869 with the first crematory there was not popular at all. People were horrified by the idea of burning a body. And yet, you know, it takes time for our attitudes to shift and for choices to really make sense. So we're really about choices and supporting choices that our clients come to us wanting, but also educating them that there are other options they haven't maybe heard about. I am going to, I think I can fit this in, chat a little bit about water cremation, because it's a signature offering of the Natural Funeral. And now we also have a subsidiary in Denver called the Water Crematory, and are bringing that to the Denver area as well, making it more accessible. Water cremation, I'm going to show you a quick video about too, so I'm not going to speak too much about that, other than to say it's doing what would happen with a burial, but within a couple of hours. And it's been around for more than 100 years, and it's legal in about 20 states now, and has been legal in Colorado for since 2011. So I'm going to play you this, and then
Water cremation wasn't something I knew very much about, but it was something my wife had the opportunity to look at, and it really fit in very well with her ideas on sustainability and kind of paying it forward and doing what was right for the earth.
The low carbon footprint of water cremation really appealed to me as a scientist, as a research meteorologist, because I'm well aware of the problems with our changing climate due to burning fossil fuels.
Doug died very suddenly and unexpectedly, but I was very comforted that the Natural Funeral was here. Doug composted everything, he gardened in the summer, and so to be able to return the remains of his body basically in the form of a fertilizer that would nourish the soil was really a blessing. It's a loving of life and an affirmation of life, even in the midst of a death.
I I was trying to stop sharing my screen so I could just speak, but I think I'm complete at this point. I certainly welcome our company welcomes anyone who's interested to know more to get in touch, to have a tour even in these times, or we can chat via Zoom. We do pre-planning as well, and I'm grateful for this opportunity. I mean, this is really my mission. Why I'm here in life is to bring people choices and support them to have healing experiences at death.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen. That was wonderful. I know for me personally, it's something that's brand new to me. And so those videos were very helpful, and we welcome everybody's questions, whether they're for Karen and Green Funerals or Holistic Funerals, or even for Alejandro for our pre-planning for Dignity Memorial as well. So we did have a couple questions that did come in during the presentations. So as we wait for a couple others to jump on, we'll go ahead and get started with those. So our first one came in for Alejandro, and I don't see you on the screen yet, Alejandro. Would you mind turning your video back on for us? Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, so I know that you had answered it specifically to the person, but I do know that it'll be a kind of a commonly asked question. So if cremation is pre-planned and prepaid through your services, but your customer moves out of the area, you know, what kind of provisions are made for those types of scenarios?
Yes, and great question on that. So with the Dignity Memorial provider, we are the largest funeral, cremation, and cemetery provider in North America. And so one of our providers in that area would be able to assist the family with carrying out that cremation at no additional cost to them. So those pre-arrangements would be fully honored by one of our other providers.
Wonderful. So our next one that came in is actually for Karen. So this person saw an article on human composting, and is that the same as water cremation, or is that different?
It is ultimately reducing the body to elemental parts. So it accomplishes that in the same way and returns something that is beneficial to the earth. I actually have testified at the state capitol twice now on behalf of this natural organic reduction process that is going to absolutely become legal in Colorado. There's no question. The committees that have heard this bill the members have voted unanimously for it to be made legal. So it is a different process. One is using water. Natural organic reduction places the body into a container that has alfalfa and straw and other things that help break down the physical remains and ultimately turn the body into soil, which is a remarkable thing that can happen. With water cremation, we have the bones left, and then all of the tissues, etc., have then been incorporated into the liquid, the water primarily, and the alkaline compounds, the potash, and been transformed into this fertilizer that can be then distributed and put back onto the earth. So they're both really eco options, and we're all about supporting eco options.
Great. And then I'll stick with you, Karen, really quick as well. So whether it's water cremation, flame, holistic funeral services, or a green burial, do you work with lower income households, or are there resources for financing your services?
Absolutely, yes. And we certainly accommodate people who are on Medicaid, and we like to think that we are here to never turn anyone away for whom we can make a difference when they have had a loss. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I have got a question for both of you, but I think I'll start with Alejandro. So even for pre-planning, right, it's not something that everybody always thinks about. And, you know, it can be kind of emotional and touchy. And sometimes, you know, people have the mindset that they don't want to be thinking about, you know, something this morbid, I guess, you know, that early before we even have to think about it. So for somebody that, you know, has that kind of experience or, you know, approach, what's just something you would say to them to kind of, you know, in a nutshell, get them to just kind of open their minds to it?
Sure, sure. Well, I mean, it's definitely not the most comfortable thing to think about. I mean, any thought that goes toward our demise is something that we naturally steer away from. So what I usually use in my approach is the concept of protection. And in particular with families that have children that they would leave behind, you think about everything that you do for that child to prepare them for life. You know, sometimes let's just say, you know, they enroll in driving school, they get that new car. So you've really gotten them prepared for that aspect. And you've gone through the preparation of protecting them if something were to happen. And so in the case of our eventual passing, don't think of it as something that is you know, that morbid part of it, but rather what can you do to protect your family in an event that is going to happen to all of us.
Yeah, that's great. And it'll be helpful even for loved ones, spouses, you know, any kind of, you know, situation that might arise. And so Karen, kind of the same question, but I did also want to format it back to just the holistic approach, right? So, you know, it's brand new to somebody or they haven't heard about it before. There are a lot of different options that, you know, the natural funeral offers. So just getting your common customer to kind of open up their minds to something so new or something so unknown, what's something that you would kind of pitch to them?
Yeah, it's interesting. We had somebody come in recently who had so much anxiety about walking into a funeral home, which I understand, and he was not facing any kind of terminal illness. And he sat down with us and, you know, the question is, well, why are you here? Oh, well, my wife, you know, she was like giving me the elbow. I have to get in there and make the arrangements and give her some peace of mind. And when you start talking to someone about their values and their beliefs, it is a really precious and meaningful exercise, because it's talking about death and what do you want, and, you know, do you want cremation and this casket, all that. But really, we're talking about our values and how do we want to leave? What do we believe in even happens after the last breath? How do people support whatever journey they think we're on, if they have any kind of spiritual belief? So there's an opportunity for a really deep and meaningful conversation that is beyond, you know, checking boxes around your options. And, you know, we ended up laughing with this man. If you can plan when you are not in crisis, you are going to take in information so much better. If you're at need, as they call it in the industry, it's very hard to get across all of the possibilities and to have somebody be able to digest those, because, you know, grief is going to play a huge role in our brain's ability to process. Mm-hmm. So to talk about these things, to understand, I mean, I'm a death is part of life person. And I feel that having death kind of part of my life has really given me this appreciation of what I have now that, you know, we don't know. Life can turn on a dime, right? Like, right. You know what's going to happen. And so it's a big out breath for people when they actually get to do this planning piece and then have conversations with family members as well. I mean, you get to know each other. You get to ask these deep questions that can be very connecting for families.
Absolutely. And so then kind of piggybacking off of that, I'll ask both of you as well. So now somebody is, ready to make an appointment or reach out to you. So, we're in the middle of a pandemic still, even though we're getting through it, so do you offer virtual chats or video calls or anything like that? And then kind of just what would be the next steps for you guys as well? So I'll start with Karen, since I still have you on my video.
Yes, absolutely. We do Zoom chats, conversations with people all the time. We have even done Reverent Body Care, which you had a glimpse of, where we have streamed it because family members cannot come in to be the hands. So we have been their hands. Like, we're washing their feet. We're anointing them with frankincense oil. We're inviting you to say a prayer or to play an instrument. I mean, it's amazing what we can do with technology. And so we're blessed, I think, to have it.
Great. And then, Alejandro, with Crist specifically, but even just Dignity Memorial.
Yes, absolutely. Since the start of the pandemic, we have been accommodating families through virtual appointments. And so definitely available for people who are not comfortable coming to the facility, or for us coming to them, absolutely. And so we start the process simply with a phone call or an email, and then we follow through from there.
Great. And then I know somebody did have a question as well, Alejandro, about your pamphlet that you mentioned during your presentation, or the planning guide, excuse me. And so are those, I know I got so many things in my brain. And so are those available online? Do we have to reach out to you to get something like that? How does that work?
Yes. So definitely just reach out. We can certainly set a time. The personal planning guide is something that is very detailed. So what we want to do is walk a family through the process of filling it out. It actually begins with the information that will be required for the death certificate at the time. And as we go back to being able to reduce the guesswork for a family at the time, we feel that that's a really, really important part of the guide itself. And because it's so lengthy, we do want to meet with the family to present it. If they decide that they want to do something virtually, we have the capability of presenting it virtually, and then of course mailing it to them if they like.
Okay, great. So what are some of the approximate costs of a prepaid, cremation, or even just a prepaid pre-planning, package?
So right now, for cremation on our side, with everything involved for the cremation, and we do include an urn, you're upwards of about $3,000 or so, depending on the urn that you select. And did you want me to also cover a traditional service?
Yeah, if you could also do traditional, perfect.
Sure. So a traditional funeral, a lot of, you've got some variants in there in the form of caskets or flowers, but I would say on average, you're probably at about 10,000.
Okay. So of course, just even getting that head start, aside from, and I know you also mentioned that one of those frequently asked questions that I've come across a lot is just with the life insurance. And so, it does take a while to get some of that money. And I think that's something that people don't necessarily realize. So having something in place, absolutely, just the, less stress afterwards. Yeah,
for sure. And I think it's important to mention as well too, Lindsay, to all out there, is when prearrangements are made, let's say, you enter into a plan, and then something happens to where the person passes away while they're still paying. Well, at the time that you entered into the plan, those costs are honored. And so the family is protected from any overages at that time. It's simply a matter of taking care of the balance at that time. And then with some plans that we have that do include funeral insurance, if there is an amount paid into at the time of the passing, that amount can actually cover the cost of the funeral itself.
So, and then that was another question that I was actually about to lead into as well, that I just wanted to make clear for myself even, those costs that you incur, they don't rise even over time. So even before the passing of somebody, you lock in a specific rate. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, wonderful. And so I did have something, a question that is for both of you as well. And this one is just politics aside. I just wanted to know your opinions and kind of what's happening in the industry. So the Biden administration this week, they mentioned that they're launching a funeral assistance program that offers people up to, I think it said $9,000 or $10,000 to cover COVID-19 deaths. And so I was just wondering, even though it's brand new, so it's okay if you don't have an answer yet, but is that something that you guys are planning for, or does that alter anything that you currently are operating with? How does that affect you guys?
Karen, I've spoken a lot, so I'll go ahead and let you take this one first.
If it's a benefit that's available, then we're going to honor it and provide services. Our services are typically not more than 7. Our direct cremation, flame cremation, is $19.95, and our water cremation is $49.95 from the natural funeral. And then we have a direct provider in Denver where it's closer to $3,000. And we would honor whatever benefit, just as we honor Medicaid and, we take life insurance policies. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how it would really change anything, and people would have the same choices.
And on our side here, I mean, I have very little knowledge on what you just stated there, Lindsay, but I would imagine that certainly we want to be there to take care of the family in any capacity. And if that means that assistance is obtained either federally or through the county, whatever the case is, bottom line is we are privileged to serve every family. And so we would certainly be willing to work with that.
Yeah, wonderful. And I do apologize. Yeah, I just read about it as well. I think it comes in effect sometime this week, early next week. So I know it's very brand new, but great. And so then Karen, I think our last one was for you. So let me just double check. I want to make sure I didn't miss it. I think it was about the cremation services, that the different types that you offer. So the bones that are,
Oh yeah, somebody asked about the bones.
Yeah.
So with water cremation, you actually get 20% more of the bones that remain, because with flame cremation, there are some that are actually incinerated and go out of the chimney stack. And we reduce those in the same way that they are turned into a kind of powder as with flame cremation. And families get those back in an urn, and they do their burial or scattering, or they have their person in their home for a while until they're ready to do some kind of ceremonial parting with the remains. So it's very similar.
Wonderful. Well, Karen, Alejandro, thank you so much for your time. We actually just have a couple minutes left, so I will go ahead and wrap it up for us. Everyone, if there's a question that I missed or a question that you think about after today, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on our website, dailycamera.com/aging. And so we'll have that up by the end of the day tomorrow. If there's anybody that you think would benefit from this information, or if you wanted to share this with somebody, that's where you can access it. And then same thing, that's where you'll be able to find Alejandro's contact information, a little bit more about the natural funeral as well. And so feel free to reach out to them. They are here for you. And we just really appreciate your time today as well. Both covering very important topics, I think, and something that, we normally don't take the time to really pre-plan or consider, all of our options. So thank you so much. And with that being said, we are back tomorrow with our next webinar, again, right at 12 o'clock for our lunchtime conversations. If you would like to register for any other webinar series, you can also do that on our website. So thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.